over the last few years, one of the key, basically the key non-Asian emerging market that's been perceived as a structural story has been Mexico. I suppose what we're trying to work out at Matthews, a lot of investors trying to work out is, does that structural story remain?
Yeah, I mean, fair question. I imagine there could be some short-term cause for some FDI. If you think about it, people, big events, both in the local elections and the upcoming US elections, maybe sit on their hands a bit. But honestly, my sense is the structural story remains. It won't be derailed. I mean, just to remind you, the structural story, two or three key pillars. On the left-hand side there, a significant one, a bit like what we have in the Philippines, is very significant amounts of overseas remittances. It's running at over $60 billion US. The second would be, I would mention pension reforms. There's some positive developments there that could drive sort of annuity flows into the market. And the third and the most talked about is the right-hand slide there, referring really to the nearshoring theme. FDI running at about $35 billion a year. And let's not forget how significant Mexico has become to the US. Now, Mexico this year overtook China to be US's key import market. So we had $475 billion of Mexican exports into the US. And what's even more powerful is the reverse side. What we're seeing is integration and interdependence, because Mexico has now become the US's largest export market as well. It's just overtaken Canada. So a very strong structural theme there.
So long-term story remains, but we're worried about the politics. Are we more positive today than we were? What would make us more positive?
Yeah, I think the reason to be more cautious in the short term is there's a number of sort of fairly critical events coming up. Firstly, September 1, we get the newly appointed Congress members taking seat. Now, that creates the risk that AMLO pushes through the constitutional reforms that he tried to do in February. We know he wants to leave a legacy, so he could fast track through some constitutional reforms. The second one is we also have in the same month of September, before Claudia Sheinbaum is inaugurated in October, we have the federal budget. And again, AMLO likes to spend, and there's concerns around fiscal deficit. The third one would be around cabinet appointments. Honestly, some of those happened already. A couple of them, key ministerial posts have happened and actually quite well received, but we've got many more to come. And that will be important. It will kind of give us a steer as to what she's thinking in terms of her social and economic policies, because some of that stuff is not very clear. And, bear in mind, Mexico does have some of its problems. Think of Pemex, $100 billion of debt, the state utility company, CEF, the tax and the drug and cartel issues. So that would be my third point. And the final point, which is probably the most worrying, is around the US presidential elections. Not just the elections themselves, but the campaigning, which is already underway. And unfortunately, both Biden and Trump both share a hard stance against Mexico, whether it's on issues of immigration, drugs, or trade. And so rhetoric is likely to remain noisy. I think the bark will be, worse than the bite, but noisy rhetoric and a market with, as I say, these political issues plus high rates. And just bear in mind that rates are, in terms of nominal and real, are very high. Nominal rates are 11%. Means I think we should position ourselves kind of more cautiously short term.
Very interesting. In the future, what sectors are you really looking for?
Yeah, so shorter term, I think US dollar beneficiaries, Mexican companies with significant US exposure. Longer term, I met a number of awesome franchises, very strong market positions in markets with a large addressable market, sensible capital allocation. So I'm talking about the bottlers, I'm talking about convenience stores, I'm talking about some of the banks, particularly maybe on the micro side. and even actually some of the retailers. So there's rich pickings actually, and there's time, I think, just to sharpen our pencils and do the due diligence. We have a bit of time.
So in one way, it's still a classic emerging market consumption story.